Welcome everyone. In this video we're going to derive a formula for the Johnson noise. Let me first write it down. So Johnson noise. To just briefly describe what it is, Johnson noise is the noise due to thermal fluctuations, and it is the noise for voltage. So basically we want to derive a formula for the voltage fluctuations, voltage noise across a resistor due to the thermal fluctuations. All right? And so for that we can first draw ourselves a diagram, which always helps. So let's say we have an alternating current source here, right? And that's going to be connected to a resistor with resistance R. And all of this will be connected to a transmission line. So this is connected to a transmission line. And we're not really interested in what the transmission line is, but I do want to just draw it in dotted lines maybe. Let's say that it also has a resistor R in it, so that we've matched the impedances of both lines. And if you're not really sure about what that means, don't worry about it. Doesn't really matter for this video's purpose. But so we've connected it to a transmission line. And the important thing is that the transmission line has length L, right? So let's say, well, I said it. Okay, it has length L. That's the length of the transmission line. And it is the only thing that's really important for our purposes actually here. All right? And so, if you just have a line like this, right, and it has length L, and since we're dealing with an alternating current source, we're going to have voltage waves. And if you know a bit about transmission lines, it's really good because they allow you to have waves propagating in both directions, right, backwards or forwards. And that's, in fact, why we have a transmission line here. And so we're going to have a transmission line of length L. And we're going to have a wave, right, that is propagating on this. But if you just look at this, so the wave could be like this, right? Or it could be like, I don't know, it could be like this, you know, or it could have two nodes, so maybe like that. You get the idea. And if you look at this, you can realize I've drawn different waves that have how do you put this? So I've drawn different waves, and you can notice that they've satisfied this relation. Let me just write the math. It will be easier to explain for me. So they're like basically, since, you know, a wave is like, you know, cos kx maybe, or sine kx, we've basically fit an integer number of half wavelengths. So it's going to be like, how do you do that? So we have L, and we are going to have an integer n, and lambda over 2. I hope this part is clear. I hope I haven't confused you guys. So when n was 1, right, we fit a half an integer wavelength, half a wavelength. When n is 2, which is this red one, well, we fit a full wavelength. When n is 3, you get the green one. I hope you get the idea, right? This is a really important restriction on the number of wavelengths we can fit for a given transmission line length, okay? So that's that. And now, I mean, obviously we know that lambda is 2 pi over k, so we can substitute that in, which gives you, well, what is 2 pi? So that's going to be, I think, m pi. Right, so that's 2 pi. So m pi over k, I think. Yeah. Which means if we solve for k, then k is going to be given by m pi over L. M pi over L, right? So that's one relation we needed. And another relation is the dispersion relation, which is really famous, that omega is equal to c times k. C is the speed of the waves, and omega is the angular frequency, k is the wave number. Right? And so if we just look at delta k here, that's going to be the wave number difference between consecutive wave numbers. And that's obviously going to be given by pi over L, because n is an integer. And then if we want to figure out a formula for delta omega, then using the dispersion relation, we just multiply the delta k by c to get c pi over L. Okay? And we can think of this as a mode of frequency, right? And this is going to be for an interval of frequencies. So for frequencies that are in an interval of delta omega, that are separated by delta omega, right? And it's that formula we have. Now we're going to invoke a theorem, which is called the equipartition theorem. And a lot can be said about it, but to summarize it briefly, it tells us that for every quadratic energy term in the Hamiltonian, it has, on average, an energy of half kBT. Kb is the Boltzmann constant, T is the temperature. Right? And so, in our case, we have a mode, right? We said, here's one mode we're interested in. And these are waves. These are harmonic modes. And so for a harmonic oscillator, we can think of it in terms of a harmonic oscillator. A harmonic oscillator would have two terms, right? A kinetic energy and a potential energy term. And they both have a quadratic dependence. One depends on x squared and the other depends on v squared. So both of them, by the equipartition theorem, contribute a half kBT to the energy on average, and that means that in total there is a kBT contribution. So kBT contribution from each mode. Okay? And so then we can, if you're interested in now the energy per unit length on this transmission line, so let me just write that down, that's important. So that's energy per unit length. And, well, let's say like stored in this delta omega range, right? Well, I'll just say it. I don't want to write it explicitly, but so this is the energy per unit length stored in this delta omega range of our mode. Okay, so what is the energy? We just discussed that. That's kBT. And the length is L. And of course, if you just look at this formula then, we can substitute for L. And what we substitute is that it's going to be, well, we're going to have kBT delta omega over c pi. Okay? And I invoke another thing that we know about transmission lines. And again, I'm sorry, I'm using a bunch of stuff that I haven't really discussed in previous videos, which I don't really like to do on this channel, but I really want to talk about this video, so I just did something unusual, let's say. But if you want to learn more about, the equipartition theorem or the transmission lines or anything that I've mentioned in this video which is not clear, please write it in the comment section. I'll do my best to make a video about it or explain it in the comment section, depending on how much elaboration is needed. But fine. So I was saying, okay, so another fact about transmission lines is that it allows, as I said, for waves to propagate on both directions. Okay? And so, since they're propagating on both directions, half of the energy we've calculated here will be incident on our resistor. What do I mean? Well, if you have this resistor here, right? or I can just do it on the diagram I've already put up. So we have the resistor here, right? And here, some energy will be going this way and some will be going that way. Okay? And so you can see that half of the energy is going away from the resistor and half is going towards the resistor. And I mean, you could also do it like here as well, right? Half goes that way, half goes that way. So we basically see that half of the energy is incident on our resistor. Which means that if we do, I don't know, maybe if I do energy I as an energy incident, that's going to be half of what we've done. So I just put that, so I just divide by 2 there. And if we now consider, well, before that actually, so that's energy per unit length, right? Instant energy per unit length. If I want to go to power now, well, what is power? So power would be, and this is again incident power, so it will be the incident energy per time, right? Unit time, which I can put with T, I guess. Well, we already have incident energy per unit length. We want it per unit time. So if we just multiply that by, or divide by, if we divide that by the speed, by c, right? You can notice that the units are going to work out, won't they? Because c is a velocity, it has units length over seconds. So we get rid of the seconds and we end up with energy per length. Oh, wait, okay, I mean that's, wait, let's just make it, no, that's not right. I was just being stupid. Well, so that's true though, right? Power is energy per unit time. Now we want to have, we have energy per unit length, okay? So here, if we just, okay, I think I got it. If I just multiply this by c, right, on both sides, that's good. If I multiply by c, that's going to, cancel. So because c has length over time, that's going to cancel the length, and we're going to have energy per time. So that's good. Which means that the incident power, so P incident, let's say, is equal to kBT delta omega. And sorry for the pencil, guys. It's still not working quite effectively. I haven't changed it yet. So it's kBT delta omega over 2 pi. So the c has cancelled, as you can see. Now, in thermal equilibrium, we require that this is going to be equal to the dissipated power by the resistor. On average, right? We're talking with averages here because the fact that we've substituted kBT, the fact that we've used the equipartition theorem tells us that we're interested in averages, which is quite common for thermodynamics actually, so that's all right. But the point is, this is going to be equal to the dissipated power, which is, I mean, you probably know this. We could discuss it again in a future video if you want, but it's equal to I squared R. But we're discussing the average power dissipated, so that's averaged. Right? And in our circuit, what would the I be? Well, if you just look above, we have 2 resistors in our circuit, right? Because I wanted to impedance match the left side of the circuit. So I need to have the same impedance on both sides. That's why I have an additional R in the dotted part, right? And so that's going to give you by Ohm's law, I guess, that V is equal to IR. R here is 2R. R here is 2R. So we have that I is actually equal to V over 2R. That's the total resistance in the circuit. And using Ohm's law, we get that formula for I. So we can just, we can just substitute that in here, which is going to give you, well, so V squared over 4R squared times R. And obviously R, well, we think it's a constant, okay? It doesn't need to be a constant. Obviously, it might change with temperature, but we're neglecting that. So we can take it out of the time average. So let me just see what that's going to be. So it's going to be V squared over 4R squared. So I think it's 1 over 4 V squared average, I believe. Yep, I think so. Obviously, check my math, guys, right? Why would you not? And I mean, we're about to be done, basically. We're just looking for the average of V squared, actually. So V squared average. And notice, this is not the average of V squared. That would be 0 for a sinusoid, right? This is V squared, then you average it. So that's going to be then 4R kBt delta omega, for which we can just write 2 pi delta f divided by 2 pi. And here the 2 pi's cancel, and you get the formula that you've probably seen before on this topic, that the Johnson noise is given by 4 kBt r delta f. And that's in fact the formula that I wanted to prove in this video. And there is a quantum mechanical version of this Johnson noise, which would be obtained by I don't want to discuss it any further, but this is a comment that's made most of the time when people teach this, so I want to make this comment as well. If we have not used the equipartition theorem, but rather, because notice, equipartition theorem just let us write down an energy, right, for this mode we have, for this delta omega mode we have. You can, in fact, derive how much energy it's going to have using quantum mechanics, or I can even say Bose-Einstein statistics, right? Treating it as a boson. And so you could just replace kBt by, let's see, h bar omega by e to the power of beta h bar omega minus 1. Beta here is 1 over kBt. So I'm just telling you, that would be the quantum mechanical version of that, which could be discussed, but I think it introduced a lot of things that needs to be well understood before one does this derivation, like Bose-Einstein statistics, what a boson is, or where this formula comes from. So I did not want to do that, but this is the formula in the box. That's the most common way people encounter it for the first time, and that's how I encountered it for the first time. I also want to mention that this video was heavily influenced by the chapter in Catherine and Stefan Blundel's book on thermal physics, named, I believe, Concepts in Thermal Physics. It's an excellent book. If you want to read more about this thing, you can check their book out. I highly recommend it. I use it on a regular basis. I think it's great. And in there, you would also find stuff about where this part might come from. Okay? Anyways, I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, please add them in the comment section. I hope to see you in another video. Until then, take